Welcome to the Dream 100 Show, the epicenter of influence, collaboration, and exponential growth. You're about to discover the power of relationships. Dream 100 relationships. And you're one relationship away from a totally different business and life. This is your host, Michael Tasner.
Hey there, and welcome to this week's edition of the Dream 100 Show. This is the second of the three-part series about how to conduct effective, strategic annual planning. Now, even if you have a team of one at the moment, this is still an exercise that you want to make sure that you are embarking on. So last week, we talked about the process of analyzing the year. So looking back on the year and lasering in on all the projects in particular. So what went well with the particular project? What didn't go well? And then is there some way to gain some momentum from a project? So often with entrepreneurs, what I found, and myself obviously included, is that we get into the hype of doing lots and lots of things. You like activities. This is firing, that's firing, this is moving, that's moving. And we bring a project often to completion or often to kind of 50% done, and then we move on. And then we often forget about all these really great and amazing projects that we tackled during the year. And I like to look at those first from an annual planning standpoint to see, is there still some meat on the bone? Is there some more traction that we should be embarking on with that particular project? Is there something that we missed? Is there something we need to go back and analyze? Did we bring it to completion, but in reality it was 80% done, so it really wasn't complete? So I'd love to start there from an annual planning standpoint, and in particular, making sure that you're getting feedback from across your entire team. I don't just want feedback from one person. If you've got a team of 10, for example, I'm looking for feedback from them. I'm looking for what worked, what didn't work, what are some of their observations, what would they have done differently? Now, again, if you're a team of one, you're going to be doing all parts of this, but you have to be reflective and you have to leave the emotions out of it. I did a great podcast called Facts, Not Feelings. And you have to be looking at this year with facts, not feelings. So I just had a strategy call for the Dream 100 process for a Done For You program yesterday. And we looked at the facts, and within the first 5 minutes, I knew they weren't going to be a fit for the program based on their current revenue. But instead, I turned it and I did some consulting and kind of gave them some advice, unsolicited advice on what I would do if it were my company. But the facts of that particular situation, their revenue went from like 250 or 300,000 to like 50,000 this year. So a drop of $200,000 in revenue. Facts, not feelings. So we had to really look at and dig further into that. So look through your projects, get feedback from the team if you have feedback. And then as discussed last week, you're going to start to compile it. And that's going to help when you walk into your meeting, which is the third and final step. Today, there are going to be two different exercises, two different parts, and they're different but similar. So the first part of this exercise, and if you haven't noticed, all this stuff is planning for your annual planning. Most businesses walk into it and they do their annual planning. They schedule a half day or a day, or some organizations, if you're following things like the entrepreneurial operating system, they might schedule 2 or 3 days in a row and really debrief and kind of get in the weeds. And that's great. But what often doesn't happen is all the planning that has to lead up to that. So you're not doing all the planning live at the event. So I'm bigger about doing planning, kind of checking things off a list before you actually walk into your annual planning session. It makes it more impactful, and candidly, a lot of the hard work is already done, so you can have more strategic, fact-based conversations rather than a lot of the emotions that are going to kind of come about beforehand. So the first part of the exercise today is I want you to have your team go through and do a very simple list. Start doing, stop doing. Again, if you're a team of one, you're going to do this for yourself. But I want you to go through all the different areas across your business and start to analyze. Are there things you need to start doing? Some things you need to stop doing. So, for example, I'll give you some of mine. So, stop doing. One of mine would be around productivity. I need to stop checking my emails before 10 a.m. Why? Because often then I get sucked into emails and then a whole bunch of time goes by and then I have already realized I'm behind on my most important project for the day, and then it just goes into a little bit of a rut for that day. I don't like being behind and winning a day. Some other things that I need to stop doing is around, and I'm going to focus personally, and then I'll do some business stuff, but eating like crap. I have a tendency to eat bad food that isn't great for me, and then I pay for it over the course of a couple of hours. If you go and you eat fast food for a lunch, that crushes my energy, and then I don't feel like shooting as much content or doing those important activities. On the business side, we need to stop overcomplicating things. We have a tendency to want to launch a package or a program with like 25 different deliverables. And in reality, 2 or 3 deliverables would work really well so that we could ship it, move it quicker. If I switch over to start doing, I want to go off that last one. I want to ship things faster. I want to bring things to market quicker, whether they're books, courses, products, packages, bring it to market quicker, get feedback, and then continue to iterate rather than spending 6 months and making the perfect package or the perfect course, come to realize that we missed a couple of things or the market shifted and we didn't necessarily need to do all those different things. So I want to see our team be a little bit quicker from a end delivery standpoint and just ship it. We need to start leveraging a lot more AI. There's obviously AI can be leveraged in every single area across a business. Finances, operations, marketing, sales, like all these different areas. We need to start spending a lot more time each week looking at how can AI complement all the things that we're doing? How can AI accelerate the things we're doing? So what you're going to do is take a couple of steps back and you're going to start with yourself. And similar to last week's exercise, I want this to be blind. I do not want your team seeing what you're writing. I don't want, until everyone is done, for your end team to see what everybody else wrote, because they tend to conform to either what the owner or leader had written, or they tend to be more agreeable, or they just will add a couple of things on their list that they saw from those lists. I want their unsolicited, their unbiased views on what needs to stop happening and what needs to start happening. So the feedback you're going to give to your team is to do this exercise and email it to you. They can put it on a simple spreadsheet. They can put it on a Word doc. I mean, whatever is easiest. And I want you to give them a set amount of time. So don't make this a 3-week exercise. I would give them maybe 2 or 3 hours over the course of 2 days and have them spend an hour, hour and a half of quiet time where they can do this and not be interrupted. And then the next day come back, revisit the list, and then add anything else. The other asterisk of this is I really don't want them subtracting things. So once you've added it to the list, it shouldn't come off the list. It needs to stay on the list. So that is the exercise that they're going to do. Now, they're going to compile it. They're going to send it to you. You're then going to take your answers as well, and you're going to compile this into a long start doing, stop doing list that gets circulated to the team without names. You're not going to put what you had on there. You're not going to put what each, and you're not going to kind of copy and paste their answers. You're going to randomize it a bit so that people can't start to figure out like who's who. And then what I'm looking for is everyone to rate their top 5 favorite items. Now, again, like last week, we want the ratings to be blind. So whether you duplicate the sheet and then no one else can see it, or however you want to do it, or they send you on chat privately their top 5 in each category, and you're going to then tally those votes. And the end goal is to have a list in order, your top 5 start doing things, your top 5 stop doing things. And you want to then bring those to your final annual meeting, which we'll talk about next week. So you'll have that list organized in tandem with all the kind of 360 audit feedback of all the projects that you completed. So that's the first of 2 exercises. The second exercise is for you to have your team figure out their most important number. What do I mean by that? There are a lot of different types of businesses that listen to this podcast. Like they're not just one particular niche. But we tend to have an audience of small to medium-sized business owners in a variety of different niches, from home services to professional services, some franchises, and kind of everywhere in between. Now, at your business, you're going to have different departments. So if I look at my business as a marketing agency, that's one of them. We have another business which is in the home services business, so epoxy, for example, epoxy floors, counters, etc. There's obviously different departments there. What you're looking to do is to have your team figure out and identify their most important number, that if they were to only track this one number and report to you this one number every week, that you could get a pulse on how well they're doing, how their department is doing, and candidly, the ones that roll up, how well the business is doing. So for example, they're easy ones to figure out, like sales. Salesperson, if they're one number, you could look at a bunch of numbers. How many calls are they doing? How many leads are coming in? Strategy sessions, customer visit or prospect visits on site. You can look at all those different metrics, but the one number is number of deals won. If they're reporting that to you every single week, and every week you're getting a 0, a 0, a 0, a 0, a 0, you can get a very quick pulse that something is not working there. What I'm looking for your team to do is to really think hard about their numbers and come back to you with one number, their most important number. And I want you to do the exact same thing for yourself. When I was thinking about this exercise before I wanted to, and we've done this, so again, I don't teach things that we haven't done, I had a hard time identifying just one. But I will tell you that after you have your one, in next week's content, when we talk through the structure of your actual annual planning meeting, so all this stuff is all the pre-work, all the setup work, getting metrics, getting ideas so that you're bringing all that to the table, you're going to end up identifying 3 key performance indicators. But one of those 3 has to be their most important number, that it can tell the entire story. If you look at a marketing agency, you might have someone that does paid traffic. Theirs most likely will be cost per lead or cost per sale. If I was looking at a service business, let's say it is the landscaping industry, the salesperson, you're going to want to know how many new customers they signed up. Your customer service people, maybe the number would either be number of complaints resolved or number of phone calls taken, for example, or number of issues resolved. If you look at the actual crew, what's the number that you need to know from them? Is it number of lawns that were completed during the course of the week? Is it the average amount of time per lawn, for example? What can tell you the story to make sure that they're pacing, they're making progress, they're moving in the right direction? So you're going to have to really get some clarity about this. But I'm looking for your team to do more of the heavy lifting for you. Have them bring these numbers to the table so that when you walk in to your annual planning meeting, you have their one number that they feel they're going to hang their hat on that can then tell that story. They're going to bring their votes that they had of here are the projects that we believe we need to start with, the projects we're going to stop with. So when I say projects, I mean items. It doesn't have to be a project. It's just a start doing, a stop doing list. And then you're also coming with that 360 audit of the projects, or is there anything that needs to be rapidly cleaned up? And are there some projects that you initiated this year that you're going to want to get some extra bandwidth? So how can I accelerate something this year? Now, again, if you're doing this alone, there are a lot of solopreneurs that listen to the show. You're having to do all of this. And you might need more than one most important metric. So when I'm looking at growing an organization, I like to build the org chart, the organizational chart, before I have all these people. So you might have yourself in the CEO role, VP of finance role, the accounting role, the operations. You might have yourself on the org chart 15 times. And I'm going to want to look at, of those, what are the metrics? In particular, the number one, what is that most important number for each of those? You still need to have a pulse on those. Just because you might say, well, Michael, my only number is sales. There's going to be one number that rolls up to the top. But I need you to also have a pulse on those other departments that you are then having to oversee. So if there's a indicator that you're going to need to put some attention, you can very quickly see it. But as a solopreneur, you obviously want clarity on what's that number one most important number. And almost always, it's going to have something to do with number of leads generated, number of sales generated, percentage of profit. It's going to have something that's tangible like that. Number of units. If you're an e-com business, it could be number of units sold. And again, there will be other metrics that we're going to get into and talk about below that, but you've got to identify your most important number. When your team knows their number one most important number, it starts to transform things for them. It makes your leadership calls more effective. It makes your one-on-one meetings more impactful because they always are coming prepared to discuss that one number. They're showing you it. They're giving you, if it's not where it's supposed to be, they're giving you a plan. If they don't have a plan and the number's not where it's supposed to be, you know that either you need a new person in that role or you need to jump in and start helping support that person to get those metrics up. So that is the lion's share of the pre-planning that I like to see you do for strategic annual planning. In our final episode next week, I'll talk through how I conduct the actual meeting, how long we have the meeting, what are the things we go through, and in what sequence. Then you can kind of take that and adapt it to better fit your business. If I don't talk to you before the holidays, have a great holiday. Merry Christmas. Michael Tasner signing off. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. I'll see you next week.